Good afternoon. Welcome to the Big Show. The Big Show comes at you every single day about 5 o'clock. We try and get it done. We try and do the best we can do to break down whatever's going on in the Pittsburgh sports. The Big Show brought to you by FanDuel Casino. We get to FanDuel. We'll talk a little bit later in the show about what we can do with FanDuel Casino and all of the different ways you can still use it, even though football season is over. We're going to talk a little bit about the Pirates today. And, of course, there is some optimism about the Pirates for the first time in a long, long time. People are talking about this team. They're talking about what they may or may not be able to accomplish. They're talking about all of the different moves that they've made and things of the such. And so, to me, it looks like it's one of those situations where we are really going for the idea of this is a year where they've made a lot of different, they've made a lot of different moves. And I think that there is a lot to be excited about. Sorry about that. But again, you have to try and be a little bit more, what I would say, you have to be a little bit more cautious when you're talking about getting excited about what they're doing. They basically went out and they signed a lot of guys. They signed, some guys. They traded for a couple of guys. And all of a sudden, when you look at what they have, they should have a better lineup, right? And I think that's where you look at what they've done and you say, okay, they have a chance. And that is where you now have to look at what they actually did and who they actually added. And the thing I'll tell you is they really, really needed to do a little bit better in trying to fit all these guys together, because I think when you look at what they have, they have to figure out how to get all these guys in the lineup. And I think two things that are going to be very interesting is you went out and you signed Marcell Ozuna, and you spent $12 million. I guess it's a good signing if you get the guy from 2024, right? Where he hit 302, 39 homers, and 925 OPS. But last year, he had a hip injury. He had a 756 OPS. He had like 225. But if you look at what they have here, they added Ryan O'Hearn, who's another guy that thought was going to be able to play DH. Well, if you have Ozuna, the only thing he can do is DH. And O'Hearn is not a great fielder either. Now you've got to try and figure out where you're going to put him to get enough at-bats out of him, because Spencer Horwitz is also somebody you're going to use at first base. So you got to probably put O'Hearn in the outfield a little bit, which I don't know if that's going to be really good. So, it'll be a platoon with Horwitz and O'Hearn. But again, it's one of these things that you can now have to figure out what you're going to do. Brandon Lowe, obviously, they brought in. I think he's an upgrade at second base. He's a guy that can't stay healthy, but, maybe he will this year. And I think that's the thing about him. Here's the other thing that I think is really interesting about Lowe. He's not great against lefties all the time. So when you look at it, it's going to be basically Bryan Reynolds in right field. Of course, you need to get O'Hearn out there some, and you need to get Reynolds at DH. But the problem is, again, you signed Ozuna. You've got basically shortstop. You got either Connor Griffin or Nick Gonzalez. And at third, you've got Jared Triolo. I think that we're looking at a team that's going to be okay, really. I think the team is going to be okay. The offense is going to be a little bit better, and I think that's where we're talking about. If you look at the whole situation, it does feels to me. It feels like it is just one of those things where you basically have to, be very, very, very careful when you're talking about how good, this team is, because I think that there is some things about it that I like, but here's one thing that I don't think that people have really thought about, honestly. It's a situation of where, to be honest, it really feels like, we are now in a place where, it feels like they are going to have to play better defense than it looks like they're capable of playing. That's what I would tell you. If they do that, then you know what I mean? They have a chance if they do that. But their defense is not going to be very good at all. That's where I would look at it, and say they've got to get better and figure out how they're going to be a better defensive team than what it looks like they're going to be on paper. I mean, Horowitz is okay. I think at second base, when you look at what they have at second base, it's kind of one of those situations where you're not all that excited about it, because I think, at second base, you've got a good hitter in Lowe, but I don't know that he's a great fielder. You've got, a situation there where Lowe is probably the best option you have at second. But at short, I mean, you're talking about Nick Gonzalez. I don't know that he's going to be a great fielding shortstop. And Jared Triolo is a great fielding third baseman. I get it, but he's not a great hitter. So, I mean, I look at this lineup and I say, when you've got Reynolds in right, you've got Oneil Cruz in center. At the end of the day, you've got to, say O'Hearn is playing maybe actually right. Maybe he plays right and Reynolds has to play left a little bit. I mean, this is not a very good defensive team at all. Not a very good defensive team at all. It's just one of those things where I look at it and I say, basically, you know what? It's got to get better. And if it doesn't get better, then to me, you really have a problem if you ask me, because you've got a pitching staff that's pretty good, but you've got to protect your pitching staff, period. And if you look at your pitching staff and you say we've got great pitchers, but they're not going to be protected by our fielders, then to me, I mean, you've got to worry about that. Because now, this entire thing, in terms of how excited people are about this team, it's all going to be predicated on the pitching being great. And I just don't know that, your pitching is going to be nearly as good as it should be if you can't field behind them. And I think that's probably what is the most, what I would say is probably the most troubling thing about this whole thing. It's just kind of a thing where you put at it and you basically say it's really, really, really difficult to kind of figure out exactly what it is that is going to be, this team. You've got some good players, I think. But again, I don't know if they're as good as they need to be, because I don't think the way they are right now, they are, in a situation of where they basically have made themselves better defensively. They've actually made themselves worse. And so to me, I think Brandon Lowe is good. I think he's obviously going to be a good player for them, probably at second base. But, when you look at it really from afar, I'm still not sold that this is going to, necessarily all fit together the way they think it's going to. Because, it's one of those things where if you have O'Hearn in right and Reynolds in left, you don't have a very good defensive outfield. And Cruz, actually, for all that he should be, oh, sorry about that. I'm sick. For all that he should be, I'm sorry, he's not. So it's just going to be real interesting to see if they can't get the most they can get out of their defense. Because, again, when you build a team like the Pirates that's predicated on the pitching staff being really good and dominant, they're not going to be really good and dominant if they can't get help from their fielders. The other thing is, you look at a guy like Ozuna. Are you getting this Ozuna? Are you getting Ozuna from 2024? Are you getting Ozuna from 2025? And the other thing that is sort of the elephant in the room when it comes to the Pirates is this. You look at their pitching staff and you certainly hope it's going to be good enough. And you certainly hope it's going to be, a pitching staff that everybody sort of is thinking it's going to be. But you're really going out on a limb on a couple of guys. You really are, if you ask me. Because if you think about it, right, there's a lot of guys on this pitching staff that I would tell you probably there are a lot of questions about. Probably there are a lot of things that you say, are they going to be good enough? And what I mean by that is I look at what their roster looks like right now, and I just say, boy, I just don't know if they're going to be good enough. I just don't. I hope they are, but you're asking a lot. You're asking a lot of the guys that are in the pitching staff, because I think that, for instance, Jared Jones is a guy we haven't seen him pitch in how long? Maybe he's good. Maybe he's not. He's coming off a major injury. Brashton Afcraft, we kind of got a little bit of a hint, that he might have a shot to be a decent pitcher, but we need to see a lot more from him, right? Bubba Chandler, same thing. Thomas Harrington didn't show much last year. Mitch Keller is Mitch Keller. You know what you're going to get from Mitch Keller, and that is a guy who's probably a solid number 3 kind of, a pitcher who's going to have stretches where he looks really good and stretches where he looks really bad. He's going to be the same guy that he's been. He'll probably actually be traded before the deadline, but, he's somebody. You've got Skenes, obviously. Skenes is basically the guy that you have where you can say, well, that's the guy we can count on. That's the guy we can count on. Because at the end of the day, he's not. He's the only sure thing you have in your lineup. He really is. And I think that's the thing about it is he's the only sure thing you have on your pitching staff. He's the only sure thing you have in your entire team, basically. I think, and that's the thing. I mean, the rotation, could it be good? Yeah, of course it could be really good. But that, again, Jared Jones has to be good. And Chandler and Ashcraft have to be good. And don't forget, people got a chance to see them last year. So now they've got film on them and all that other good stuff. And I think that's where it looks like, to me, you've got an opportunity, right? In many ways, you've got an opportunity to have a really good pitching staff. But people keep saying to themselves or trying to convince themselves that, oh, well, if you look at them, all these guys are going to be great because they're name guys that are prospects. Well, I don't know if that's how it works. I go around like I said, I'll go around the diamond for you. I mean, it seems like we've been playing this game for a lot of years, but Hank Davis has got to figure it out this year, doesn't he? A catcher, or Joey Bart. Both of them are just sort of, okay. And I don't even know if Henry Davis qualifies as okay. You've got Spencer Horwitz and Ryan O'Hearn. I think, both guys can be decent options at first, but lots of questions, I think, about it. And O'Hearn, you've got to, move him around to get him, enough at bats to get him into the lineup. Brandon Lowe probably is one of the few things that you have that is a sure thing. Triola at third is not good enough. He's a great fielder, but he's not good enough as a hitter to have a corner infield position. Nick Gonzalez, I think, is an upgrade a little bit offensively over what they've had at shortstop, but is he good enough defensively? I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at this team, and I keep saying to myself, I want to be optimistic. I want to believe that they have indeed make themselves better. I do. By the same token, we've played this game for a long, long time. Haven't we? We've played this game for a very, very long time, so I'm not sure I really believe it. And I think that's the case. When you have these guys on this team, it's just one of those situations where you have to look at this and say, I get why people are optimistic. I do. I get why people are optimistic. By the same token, I think people are taking a lot of different leaps of logic and basically assuming that some of these guys are going to be good. They're all going to work out, that the pitching staff is going to figure it out and all this other stuff. I would be very, very careful. And I don't like to be that guy who is, basically sitting here doom and gloom, and all that, because to me, it's one of those situations where doom and gloom doesn't really do much for me here. But you've got to be realistic. And I think, again, their inability to field the ball could be a real factor this year. It really could. So to me, it is really, really, really going to be interesting to see how it all fits together. Maybe it all works, Maybe some of these guys, figure it out. Maybe a couple of these players get better or bounce back. In Ozuna's case, maybe it all happens for them. But there are so many questions that I think faces this whole situation, this team. I mean, again, I think catcher is a question mark. Shortstop defensively is a question mark. Offensively, third base is a question mark. I think the entire defensive outfield is a question mark. And quite frankly, you might even be able to say the outfield offensively is a question mark. I mean, maybe this is the year that Oneil Cruz figures it out. Maybe it's not. There's just so many things about this team that I, like, but cautiously like. And I think that's a big, big part of why, I tell people, yes, you can be optimistic. There's no reason not to be optimistic because, it's a new season and a lot can happen. But at the end of the day, be careful. Be very, very careful. Because there's so many things about this team that I honestly look at and I say, I just don't know that it's good enough. I just don't. And I think that's where we're at right now with it. You have to get better. You have to get better. And, they need a lot of things to fall into place. And I think that's, even one of those things where they brought in a lot of guys, and guess what? All of them are eligible to be traded at the trade deadline too, if things go south. So I want to remain optimistic. I want to believe that this is going good. I want to believe all these things, but I have to see it first before I believe it. Because at the end of the day, the Pirates, well, we all know what their history is, and we all know that they've struggled a lot. All right, we've got to get out of here. We will talk.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.